Hello and welcome to our first video on angles. I'm Mr. Chowdhury and today we're going to be looking at measuring angles. So here is your first task. Have a look at these angles. What do you think we call them? Pause the video and have a go. Okay, so these angles are, the one on the left is an obtuse angle, the one in the middle is an acute angle, and the one on the right is a reflex angle. And these are the names of certain types of angles. So we need to know what the definitions for these names are. What makes an acute angle? What makes an obtuse angle? What makes a reflex angle? Okay, so let's have a look at some of these definitions. An acute angle. An acute angle is an angle which is smaller than 90 degrees. Any angle smaller than 90 degrees is called acute. An obtuse angle is any angle which is bigger than 90 degrees but less than 180 degrees. That is called an obtuse angle. A reflex angle is any angle which is bigger than 180 but less than 360, or in other words, bigger than half a turn but less than a full turn. So hopefully you know these definitions now. You can write these down so you have a note of them, or you can always come back to this part of the video and have a look at them. So here's a little question for you. So Emma says a right angle is obtuse because it's not acute. Pause the video. What do you think? Is Emma correct? Is Emma incorrect? Okay, so this is a very particular thing about right angles. Right angles are exactly 90 degrees. So right angles are not obtuse or acute. They are their own type of angle when it's exactly 90 degrees. And the reason mathematicians have done this is so that we have an anchoring point to determine acute and obtuse angles. We have to call that 90 degree angle something, and we called it a right angle. So that's what it is. Right angles are denoted by a little square in the angle, and that's how you know it's a right angle. So here's your next task. Your next task will be, how do we measure an angle? So if imagine you were trying to explain to an alien how to measure an angle. What steps would you need? I'd like you to have a think of that, and then we'll go through those steps. Right, so now we're going to measure this angle. So as you can see, I've got an angle drawn in. Two lines are intersecting, and I'm measuring the angle between the two of them, denoted by this blue line. So the first thing I'm going to do, my first step, is to look at the angle and decide what type of angle it is. So I'm looking at this angle and I think it's acute because it's less than 90 degrees. So I think this is an acute angle. So I've estimated this angle. My next step will be to place the base of my protractor on the line I want to measure from. So I'm going to use this bottom line here, and I'm going to take the base of my protractor. So here's my protractor. The base would be this line here, the base of my protractor, and I'm going to put it on this line that I want to measure from. So there we go. I put it there. My next step is to make sure that the cross on my protractor is where the lines intersect. So if I have a look right now, the cross on my protractor where this vertical 90 degree line meets my base, well, that's not on where the two lines intersect because the two lines intersect over here. So I need to take my protractor and I need to put it there. So that's where my protractor would go. Right there where the two lines intersect, still the base of my protractor is on the line that I'm measuring from. The next thing I need to do is decide which set of numbers I will be using to do the measurement. Now, all protractors have two sets of numbers. All protractors have two sets of numbers. They have the inside numbers and the outside numbers. So the best way to do it is to think like this, right? Do I start counting from 180? Would I ever start counting from 180? Well, the answer is no. I start counting from 0. So I'm not going to use the inside numbers. I'm not going to use 180, 170, 160. I'm going to use 0, 10, 20, like that, to try and measure my angle. So I'm using the outside numbers, not the inside numbers. I then measure my angle, and I can use a ruler to help. So I would put my ruler where the second line is to see where it is. So this red line is where I would put my ruler, and I can see that by doing this, I can see that my angle is 50 degrees. That's what my angle is. It is a 50 degree angle. And my last step is to check if the answer looks correct. Well, I said at the beginning that this was an acute angle. I said at the beginning that this was an acute angle. And I can see 50 degrees is an acute angle. So that means I've done this correctly. Because if I had got 130, I could look at it and say, well, 130 is an obtuse angle, and I wanted an acute angle, so I've made a mistake somewhere. But because I got 50 and I know it's an acute angle, I've probably done this correctly. Right, so now we're going to do an always, sometimes, never. So the way it works is I give you a statement and you have to decide whether it's always true, sometimes true, or never true. If you think it's always true, you need to give a reason for it. If you think it's sometimes true, you need to give a reason for it. And if you think it's never true, you also need to give a reason for it. So the key thing here is to think about the statement and try and find reasons for why you think it's always true, sometimes true, or never true. So here's your first statement. The addition of two acute angles make an obtuse angle. Always true, sometimes true, or never true. Pause the video and have a think. Now, if you said sometimes true, you would be correct. And the reason is this. If you have a look here, I've got 13 degrees and 15 degrees. Both of these are acute angles. If I add them together, I get 28 degrees, which is still an acute angle. However, if I have 80 degrees and 15 degrees, well, 80 degrees is acute and 15 degrees is acute. But if I add them together, I get 95 degrees, which is an obtuse angle. So this statement is sometimes true. It depends on the size of the two acute angles you are adding together. Here's your second one. Halving a right angle will give you an acute angle. Pause the video, have a think. If you said always, you are correct. A right angle is always 90 degrees. And if I divide 90 by 2, I get 45 degrees. And 45 degrees is an acute angle. So it will always be an acute angle. Here's your next one. If you turn through two obtuse angles, then you will always get a reflex angle. If you turn through two obtuse angles, you will always get a reflex angle. Pause the video. What do you think? If you said always, then you would be correct. And this is because the smallest obtuse angle to 1 degree is going to be 91 degrees. If I add 91 and 91, I get 182, which is a reflex angle, because reflex angles are bigger than 180. Even if this was 90.5 and this was 90.5, I'd still get a number that's bigger than 180. So I would always get a reflex angle if I add two obtuse angles together. Okay, two half turns give us a reflex angle. Pause the video. What do you think? And this is never true. Because if we have a half turn, which is 180 degrees, and another half turn, which is 180 degrees, we get 360, which is a full turn. We do not call 360 degrees a reflex angle. That is a full turn. Now, hopefully that's helped and you've had a better idea on how to measure angles. What I suggest you do is you go and watch Mr. Amoson's videos and measure some angles, or you go on Dr. Frost and Corbett Maths to do some more practice on measuring angles. And that should be helpful for you. Hopefully you can continue with these measuring angles and we'll move forward. Go off, be productive, and I'll see you in the next video.